Let me tell you the version of history you were taught in school. Humans were nomads, wandering, hunting, surviving. Then, around 10,000 BC, something clicked. We figured out farming. Suddenly, we had food surplus. We stopped moving. We built villages. Villages became cities. Cities needed order, laws, religion, leaders. And eventually, we built monuments. That's the story. The one taught in classrooms from Tokyo to Toronto. The one that won Nobel Prizes. The one that's been accepted for over a century. It's wrong. In 1994, on a limestone ridge in Turkey, on a site that shepherds had walked past for thousands of years, archaeologists found something that didn't make sense. Something that shouldn't exist. This is Gobekli Tepe. It is 11,000 years old. That's 6,000 years before Stonehenge. 7,000 years before the first Egyptian pyramid, built while the Ice Age was still ending. It started with a hunch. Klaus Schmidt was a German archaeologist who'd read a survey note from the 1960s, a footnote really, mentioning some odd limestone slabs on a hill near the town of Şanlıurfa in Turkey. The American team that found it decades earlier assumed it was a medieval cemetery and moved on. Schmidt looked at the same note and thought, something's wrong with that limestone. What they found was staggering. Massive T-shaped limestone pillars, some standing over 5 meters tall, weighing up to 20 tons each. Arranged in circles like spokes of a wheel. Dozens of circles, hundreds of pillars, and carved into them, not scratched, not painted, carved in high-relief three-dimensional sculpture, were animals. Foxes, boar, cranes, vultures, scorpions, snakes, aurochs. Let me give you the logistics. Each pillar was quarried from bedrock roughly 500 meters from the site. They were cut, with stone tools, then dragged or carried uphill, then raised into pre-carved sockets. Moving a single 20-ton stone with wooden rollers and ropes requires coordinated labor from hundreds of people. Not dozens, hundreds, which means there had to be a camp. People had to be fed for weeks, maybe months, meaning someone had to organize the food supply, meaning someone had to be in charge, meaning there was a social hierarchy, a supply chain, and a shared purpose, all supposedly existing in an era when humans were just wandering around looking for berries. Here's the assumption that sat at the core of everything we believed about civilization. Agriculture came first. You farm, you get surplus food, you stop moving, you build, you create religion, you build temples. That was the sequence. The gospel of human development. Göbekli Tepe breaks that sequence entirely. Because archaeologists found no evidence of farming at the site, no agricultural tools, no domesticated crops, no permanent settlement. The people who built this were hunter-gatherers, but the wild grains around Göbekli Tepe show signs of being among the earliest domesticated wheat in the world. Not domestic wheat, proto-domestic, the beginning of domestication. Right here, right at this moment in time. Think about what that means. The desire to worship, the pull toward the sacred, toward something larger than survival, was so powerful that it changed the trajectory of our entire species. A spiritual impulse drove humans to invent organized agriculture, not because we needed to eat, but because we needed to gather. The desire to build this place, to gather thousands of people to work on something sacred, forced people to figure out how to feed them, not the other way around. Religion didn't come at the end of civilization. Religion may be what started it. Now we get to the part that nobody has a clean explanation for. The part that genuinely haunts the people who study this place. Around 8,000 BC, after roughly 2,000 years of use, Gobekli Tepe was buried. Not by an earthquake, not by a flood, not by a conquering army, by its own builders. Deliberately, methodically, completely. Archaeologists can tell this because the fill is not random sediment. It's a deliberate mixture. Limestone chips, flint tools, animal bones, as if they scooped up the debris of their own civilization and used it as filler. Thousands of tons of it, packed carefully over every circle, every pillar, every carved animal. Why would you spend generations carving this place and then deliberately hide it? Were they protecting it from something? Sealing in something sacred they didn't want disturbed? Performing a ritual burial of the site itself? Or were they hiding it from someone who was coming? We don't know what happened around 8000 BC that made them stop. We don't know who made the decision. We don't know if they intended to come back. What we know is this: they buried their greatest achievement with extraordinary care. And then, they were gone. After 30 years of careful, methodical excavation, archaeologists have uncovered approximately 5% of Göbekli Tepe. 5%. Ground-penetrating radar has already mapped what's underneath. Dozens more circular enclosures, more pillars, more carvings. Possibly structures we haven't even categorized yet. Somewhere beneath that hill in Turkey, there are carvings no human being has seen in 10,000 years. Structures that were sealed in their prime. Stories carved in limestone that we haven't learned to read yet. And every answer they find raises 3 more questions. 11,000 years ago, people who hadn't invented farming built one of the most sophisticated sacred complexes in human history. They fed and organized hundreds, possibly thousands of workers. They carved masterworks into multi-ton limestone. They did all of this for 2,000 years. And then they deliberately buried every trace of it. For 10,000 years, nobody knew it was there. If an entire civilization could exist for 2,000 years and then vanish so completely that we didn't find it until 1994, how many others are still out there? Maybe we're not the first chapter of human history. Maybe we're just the latest one. Göbekli Tepe doesn't just rewrite the past. It asks a question about the future. Now I want to hear from you. Why do you think they buried it? Drop your theory in the comments.